Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the GameCola podcast. This is podcast number 77, in which we're going to talk about why your favorite RPG is overrated. We have the perfect lineup here tonight. We have Michael Ridgaway, Nathaniel Hoover, Anna Bryniarski, and Joseph Martin. Everyone introduce yourselves.
You just did. You introduced us all.
No, you introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Michael Ridgaway, and you already know who I am because I was just introduced, so there.
Nathaniel Hoover has been introduced
No.
like 60 times on the podcast.
I'm Nathaniel Hoover, and this is my favorite store on the Citadel.
I like swords.
Nothing like 2009 references.
No, that's just the first. I've got another 2008 to go before we get there.
Hi, I'm Anna Bryniarski. I have nothing to say after that.
And I'm Joseph Martin, reporting from scenic outdoors with people around. It's weird. I hope the crickets don't bother you, if you can
And
hear
who
them.
says gamers don't go outside?
I really hope people walk by and just look at you, just give you strange looks.
Yeah, that's probably going to happen.
We're going to make sure that you get especially fired up about video games. Are you wearing headphones by any chance?
I am. I am wearing headphones.
Oh, so they can't even hear us.
No.
They're just going to hear you yelling about video games.
To be fair, I've got Skype pulled up on my screen, so if anyone looks, they'll at least understand.
It's 2014. Everyone's going to be too busy looking at their phones to really care what you're doing.
So actually this began because in the last podcast we were discussing Chrono Trigger briefly, and I said that I don't believe that it is the #1 SNES game of all time, as most people seem to put it. And then Nathaniel had some
Choice words.
Yes, to say in the comments on our actual internet website on the post about the podcast.
I mean, Dems are fighting words.
I'm pretty sure that he said, Jetty, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and you are dumb.
Yep, that sounds about my writing style.
But, okay, so I guess let's get this started with Chrono Trigger. And I will clarify, Chrono Trigger is a pretty good RPG. I just don't think that it's what everyone claims, like #1, like not even best RPG, but I see a lot of people saying it's the best game on the Super Nintendo. And I just don't know if that's really...
All right. I want to take exception to something you've said.
Okay.
You said it is a pretty good RPG. Now, I'll grant you that we shouldn't be talking in absolutes about what is the best game or what is, the ultimate RPG. Because there are many amazing games for every system out there. Maybe not like ColecoVision, but there are many amazing games out there. Now, everyone can certainly have a favorite game, and sometimes people will equate favorite with best. But my favorite RPG and game for the Super Nintendo is EarthBound.
Okay.
Do I think it's the best game on the Super Nintendo? No. I think probably one of the most perfect games out there is Super Metroid, and I'd make the argument for that.
I'll
That's
take
different. Yeah, that's a different argument. But you just said that Chrono Trigger is a pretty good RPG, which means it's a step down from good.
Is it? I always thought pretty good as being better than good.
I think it's almost good.
Okay, yeah, I guess
it's pretty good. It could be better, but Chrono Trigger
mostly good.
Chrono Trigger is a damn fine RPG.
Okay.
I want to put that out there first. I know I'm not really shaking the foundations of the world here by saying that Chrono Trigger is a good game, but give it some credit.
Okay.
It does a lot right.
There are a lot of things that are good about it, like the graphics obviously were above average, the music above average, the battle system wasn't really groundbreaking. I think it was more attractive, like it looked good. It looked better.
Not relevant, because we're looking at novelty now as a big selling point for the game. Just the game in and of itself. Is the battle system good, not is the battle system groundbreaking? We're judging the game by totally different criteria if we start talking about groundbreaking.
Well, I guess the thing is that a lot of people were impressed with you're walking around on the map and then monsters pop out and you have the battle there on the map, which is cool, but I would relate that in terms of graphics over the actual system itself, which is, it's more than a standard like Final Fantasy.
It's a bit more. It's not a lot more. I mean, it's still turn-based combat. They did do some really cool stuff with the combinations.
Yeah.
That was really neat. And so you get a different sort of play style whenever you'd switch out your party members. That was something that you didn't see too often.
Well, and beyond that, Chrono Trigger does something that I can't say that it's had never been done before, because I haven't played enough other RPGs to know this, but in my experience it was definitely unique, because it was the first game, and still almost the only game until we got around to like Knights of the Old Republic, where the battles took place in the places you were. It wasn't some separate screen. It wasn't flash of lightning and then whirlwind off to look at the enemies. It's, I'm walking through a forest and there's things jumping out of the bushes at me and I fight them right here in the forest. And on top of that, depending on where my character is in relation to the other characters, my attacks, depending on what I use, might go through multiple enemies, might be completely ineffective because there's nobody close enough to me to be impacted. So a lot of different tactics started to come into play because you were really walking through there, just like it was a Zelda game where things happened in real time. For a turn-based RPG, that was very different, and on top of being different, very well done.
Yeah, I guess the two things that I would say are different from normal turn-based combat are, again, the multi-character combo moves and the... Like, it wasn't even just frontline, backline, it was like actual literal physical line or circle or triangle or whatever. And those were some pretty cool things. I guess...
but not enough to thrill you and wow you to the point where you're raving about it like other people.
Well, let me ask you, when did you play Chrono Trigger?
I played it around the time that it came out. It wasn't brand new, but it was new at the time. And I guess the thing that bugs me the most about Chrono Trigger is the story and most notably the characters, because it's not quite as big of an issue as with Chrono Cross, where literally they have dozens of characters and the only difference between them is that this one has this stupid way of speaking and this other one has this other stupid way of speaking, and that's the only, like, there's no reason to care about any of these characters. And I kind of feel like it wasn't as bad as Chrono Cross, but they had beginnings of it where all of the characters were like, whoa, she's from the past, and like she's a cat girl, like cave woman. And
well, I mean, you're talking about, a lot of it was anime tropes, which, that's to be expected from JRPGs. But I think they actually did a pretty good job of fleshing out the characters, and one of the things I love about Chrono Trigger is everybody's got a side quest at the end of the game that kind of helps them resolve things that they have been dealing with. Now, I will shit on Chrono Cross all day because, oh my god, what was like 100+ characters, and you don't care about any of them, and it's like, and they don't even get around to, they cut the part where I think his name was Guile is actually Magus. And you spend the entire game like, oh, that's Magus. Oh, that's Magus. Oh, man, there's going to be an awesome reveal. It's going to be amazing. And then it never comes, and you just feel cheated. Yet the game just teases you the entire time. And because they ran out of time, they're just like, it's Magus, you guys. But we can't say it's Magus because we don't have time to deal with it. But you can just use your imaginations. It'll be great. So screw Chrono Cross. Anybody who likes Chrono Cross, yes, that game is overrated, and you're a bad person for liking Chrono Cross.
But I guess, I guess with me, I had come off of like Final Fantasy III, which I guess is a little more serious, and to me, I guess I cared about the characters in that one a little bit more, and they didn't seem as much of tropes, you know?
I'm actually willing to give you that. I'll give you that one.
I don't know, I guess that's my main thing. And then also, I'm a fan of like Illusion of Gaia, which had an actual, like, it was an RPG, but it was like an action RPG. So it removed the whole turn-based thing altogether. And I would say, that was a game with really good graphics. That was a game with decent art. The story, I waver between good and pretentious. Have you ever played Illusion of Gaia?
Oh yeah, very good game.
Yeah.
It can get a little pretentious. A lot of the quintet games where they're kind of dealing, they kind of imagine this Earth where everything, you kind of have to revitalize it. They get into the habit of trying to make these grand sweeping, I want to say, messages about the nature of humanity, and it can get a little heavy-handed. But they're very well done games, and very different from a lot of your typical turn-based RPGs of the time. Though I want to make a quick point about Final Fantasy III, aka Final Fantasy VI, because that's not confusing at all. We talk about the characters and how they're well done, but I have a feeling if it was done, if the same game was remade these days, sort of in the style of Final Fantasy XIII, they could have the same script, but it would be drowning in melodrama because you have Terra and Celeste's tragic past. You have so many tragic pasts in that game.
It's true. I mean, Sabin and Edgar. You have
Cyan, Terra, Celeste, Locke, Setzer. Just anyone except for Shadow, Realm, Strago. Strago is just like
he's connected to Realm, and that's about it.
Yeah, it's just anyone except for Mog and Umaro has a tragic past. Who knows? Umaro. Maybe his entire clan was killed by the Empire, and he is the last surviving Yeti, and he keeps trying to express his pain, but all it comes out is
maybe that's...
Mog is maybe the only, Mog's entire clan dies.
True.
Yeah, that game would be drowning in melodrama, but what saves it is the fact that they couldn't have voice acting yet. And so in our minds, we're just reading it, and it's like, oh man, that sucks, and we get that it's sad and it's awful, and it does give these characters something that they're fighting for. But either this is the problem that Vanjie had with Final Fantasy 13, where the kid's mom dies or something in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, she's nodding, and he's like looking at it, and like his maybe like a slight bit of a lip quiver, and then it gives you the synopsis of the scene that you can read. It's just like his heart filled with rage that would know no bounds. It's like, no, it didn't. He was just sitting there staring at it blankly without an iota of expression on his face. So, I mean, be sure to place it in a certain context, because at least Chrono Trigger does have jokes to sort of break up what could potentially become very melodramatic. Yeah. So does Final Fantasy VI, but oh my god, I think these days it might be a little unbearable.
But there's a fundamental difference between the two, and this leads into why I think Final Fantasy VI is overrated.
Okay.
Chrono Trigger is a heroic story. It's uplifting. Bad stuff happens occasionally, but ultimately you're the good guys, you're doing good things, you can see the results of your good work throughout the game. Final Fantasy VI is depressing, not just because of the depressing backstories of the characters and all the sad stuff that happens here and there, but you never really win until the end. And even then, how much have you lost? Are we really just sort of, trying to make up for this a little bit? Is that it's sort of this constant downward spiral of every time you think, something's going fine, something worse happens.
It really is.
So,
yeah.
From a person like me who enjoys entertainment, I'm an escapist. I play games to feel happy and good and separate myself from all the crummy stuff of the real world. In part, there's other reasons why I play too, but that's a big part of it. So just in and of itself, the whole idea behind the story of Final Fantasy VI is not inherently appealing to me. So the story needs to work a lot harder to catch my attention and get me to get excited about it, which it doesn't, because I don't connect with most of the characters because they just aren't the kind of people that I'd hang out with, or I don't see myself in any of them, or I don't really like their abilities or what have you. So there's 2 strikes against it already, but that's just personal preference. But the gameplay, I have serious issues with the gameplay.
It is your classic click A, click A, click A, click A, turn-based battle.
And that's part of it, because the random battles out on the field don't require any strategy whatsoever most of the time. You know, you level up a little bit and then you're good to go, until you walk into the woods and a brontosaurus blows you up with Ultima.
Ah, the brontosaurus. Bastards.
That's not the sole reason that I'm not sucking it. But there's a lot of characters, and it becomes very challenging to juggle equipment back and forth when you're switching people. I can't tell you how much time I lost re-equipping people and saying, wait, did I have it on this person? Did I unequip? Do I have this in my... I had some serious problems with figuring out what the inventory items did. One thing that Chrono Trigger does very well is you know what every single item in your inventory does. Every piece of equipment, it's all incredibly clear. Final Fantasy VI, the one that stands out to me the most, I go into, what was it the magic house that has the painting that attacks you?
Yeah.
Oh,
Was
yeah.
that one?
Yeah, Alvin's house.
I'm in there, and I find, or I suddenly decide to equip the relic ring, which, according to the description, says makes body cold. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'll suddenly be frost resistant, or maybe it'll be like the opposite, that I'll be like flame resistant or something, you know, something having to do with elemental stuff. I was not expecting to cast a healing spell and kill Celis, just for the heck of it. Because makes body cold means makes you undead like a zombie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll do that.
So I had issues like that where the game wasn't really communicating to me, here's what this does or here's what you need to do. So without a walkthrough or detailed instruction manual or something like that, sort of lost. And
I mean, that's also from the era where we just had awful translations of JRPGs. Well, we had translations. We didn't have localizations. That's what we had. Where it's just like, so, you know, in Japan, you know, the words for cold might be a colloquialism for dead, you know, that's readily available, whereas, you know, they directly translate as makes you dead, they translate makes you dead to makes you cold because of the way it's phrased over there. Yeah.
Well, also because of Nintendo of America's you know, whatever limitations they put on violence and religion and all that kind of thing. Because I do also want to say, how many times, like, what is vigor? Like, I can kind of get bat power, but, like, vigor and...
how many bats you throw at people.
Like, vigor and stamina and all that, and, like, as a...
Well, stamina, having played so many RPGs, now I can look back and say stamina is usually tied into your hit points, or something having to do with your character's sturdiness, how much damage they can withstand.
Yeah.
And vigor, I think, tends to do more with attack power.
Yeah, and, like, you can kind of get that, but I think also... The last time that I played it, which again was a few years ago, I got really confused because the espers, when they tell you what bonuses they give, don't actually match up. It's like it'll give you more strength or something. It's like, is that vigor, I guess?
So that's the other thing. Final Fantasy.
Wait, which game are we talking about right now? I'm
Final
lost.
Fantasy VI, 3 for the Super Nintendo.
6, sorry.
Yeah.
I haven't
It's the
played
original.
that one, so
Okay.
I'm kind of lost.
All right. Well, the original SNES release is notoriously buggy, so let's all bear that in mind. I think the Game Boy Advance port is much better with that regard. It's also much better translated. If anyone is actually interested in playing those games, I would highly recommend the Game Boy Advance ports of 4, 5, and 6, because that's they had a new translator around for those games, and they're much better done, much easier to read.
One of which is we have a video for which we have grammar video playthrough by Michael Gray on the GameCola YouTube channel.
We have
grammar
video playthrough. That's good. There.
Although he doesn't like the game either.
Yeah.
So have we kind of come full circle on that topic? Because I wanted to raise some other bit, because I don't remember a lot about Chrono Trigger. It's been a long time since I played, at least a few years. But I do remember that I did stop playing before I beat it. I did want to go into that, because I don't want to like say I have strong opinions about it, because I've only played it once and it was a very long time ago. But I feel like there must have been, at the point I dropped off, there must have been something I was dissatisfied with, because I didn't keep going.
Okay.
So I guess like what I think happened was I was really into it at first, and I was enjoying it. I was like, yeah, I can see why everybody likes this game so much. I mean, RPGs aren't like my favorite style of game, so that would probably play into like as an RPG, I can really appreciate this. I'm personally more fond of platformers, so I'm more inclined to like others from personal bias. But I got near the end, I started just sort of disengaging from the story almost. Like I remember I think the first time that happened was I think like one of the near future sections near the end of the game, like 120 AD, I think, something like that. Or not future.
1200 AD is one
1200
of the
AD. Near the end, I feel like there was a lot of stuff going on there where I was just kind of like, all right, I'm just doing this to get to the next part of the game. I'm just doing this to get to the next part of the game. I don't know for sure because I can't remember what really happened there. And then when the part where I know where I dropped off and didn't pick it back up again was near the end. Spoilers, in case you were curious. Chrono is gone.
Spoilers!
And so that's like, I said spoilers.
It's totally spoilers!
I said that. I said it was spoilers.
Oh, I thought you said it's not.
No, it's definitely. And that was cool, like the idea of, you think that you are this one character this whole time, and then, now you're not. You don't have that anymore. And so now you've got to rework your whole party dynamics, and it was interesting. But then they give you Magus. And so, like, you're like, oh, okay, kind of, that'll be cool. And then the game has been funneling you along this storyline, and then all of a sudden you get to the part where there's the tower. The tower appears. I think the endgame tower. And, like, you've gone from, like, this really, really direct, like, this is the path you're going, you can do other stuff, but this is the path that you really need to do to progress. And then all of a sudden it gets to that point, and the whole game is just like, nope, no more direction. You can do anything. You can go anywhere.
Well, it does give you direction. It says, here's the big, bad, floating black omen that is where you need to go, and then you start poking around, and you're like, holy cow, this is really tough. I'm getting my butt kicked. Yeah. But wait, I have a time machine that can fly. Let me go poke around the overworld and see if there's anything that I can get here that's going to help me not get my butt kicked so much. And then it turns the game into more of a traditional kind of RPG exploration, which you had hints of throughout, but now you really do get a chance to go have fun.
But like when I got to that point, like I kept looking around because I think I was like, okay, I'll go do that chrono saving pathway that they talked about. And like even there it just felt like I was very like the whole game. I tend to not be under leveled in games. I'm not one to avoid, like even in this game it's very easy to avoid battles, but I'm not one to do that. I like to battle each enemy once at least. I'm the same way in like Paper Mario. But
that's another one that's no good.
But so it wasn't, and I never had problems with leveling before. Like, as long as I knew the strategy, I could take down any boss. It may take me a couple times, but it was due to strategy, not due to being underpowered. But then this, like, all of a sudden, like, at all the paths, everything new seemed to be way beyond my capabilities at the time. And anything that I could do was stuff that I had already done. Because I did explore, and, like, the only times I felt like my strength was balanced was places that I had already been. I think, again, I'm going off of like, a couple years memory, and maybe none of this is valid necessarily, but that's what I kind of remember feeling.
Well, along the Chrono Trigger lines, another one of my issues with Final Fantasy VI is at the very end of the game. Likewise, the world opens up and you have a whole bunch of side quests, or you can go into the final dungeon.
Yeah.
But unlike Chrono Trigger, it's challenging to go into the final dungeon unprepared, and you miss a whole lot of good story. But Final Fantasy VI, it's sort of mandatory to go around and do all of the quote-unquote optional side quests.
I would argue that it's not 100% necessary, but then again, I have a brother that before he left the World of Balance, he got his guys like 5,000 hit points. It was like the amount of leveling and Esper abuse he put his characters through is disgusting. But I don't know that I completely agree with you there. So
And it's been some time since I've played, but I'm just thinking about the final battle. That you look at any of the walkthroughs, or you try and do it with I'll skip the Mage Tower. Is that the one that's like 100 levels
Tower of
of
the Magi.
just
Yeah.
leave me alone for crying out loud?
Reflect rings, dude. Just equip reflect rings.
Yeah, right. So I eventually walked away from that one and said, you know what, I don't want to bother with this. And then there's some glorious item at the top where I get to the final battle, and all the walkthroughs are like, you have to use this or else you die. And then I started playing. I'm like, oh, look, I'm dying. I wonder why. So, and that's something just as a general thing about Final Fantasy that bothers me, is that they're very tactic specific. Like most other RPGs, if you find something that works for you, if you've got certain characters who are dedicated to this kind of thing, or if you've got, first round do this, second round do that, usually if you have sound tactics, you do okay. But a lot of the Final Fantasy games, and I felt like 6 is one of them, 5 is the worst of this, though. You need to very specifically tailor your team to do exactly the right thing at exactly the right time with exactly the right equipment, or you just die.
Okay, I like 5. I like 5 a lot. And I don't...
There are many positive aspects about 5. There are things that I like about 5.
And I did not get that. Now...
Did you play the original or Advance or some other port?
I played the Advance.
Okay, Advance is what I played too.
But I will say they they abuse that horribly in the DS port of Final Fantasy IV. And that is a game you absolutely need to follow a walkthrough very specifically, or you will die pretty much every 5 minutes, because it is that bad.
I mean, there's a part of Final Fantasy III that I'm sure I will never forget, because I walk in with a great party that is kicking butt. And then the boss says, guess what? You're not Dragoons, therefore you die. Like, okay, let me go back and level myself up 4 different party members as Dragoons so that we can all jump the first round and not get instant fried, and then come back and maybe fight a battle.
Also, in Final Fantasy IV, aren't there multiple parts, actually, where, like, you'll have a character and they'll just, like, take that character away from you, and including all of the stuff that character has. And if
that'll happen.
Yep.
That doesn't seem very fair to me.
Well,
you're not given any
that's
warning.
the thing. Life is not fair, and it's filled with constant disappointment, and you better get used to it.
Which is why we play video games?
That's why I play Mario Kart.
There was also the Dark Elf Cave where you had to, like, get cloth equipment and, like...
I felt that was a fun challenge.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Done sparingly, depriving you of your equipment or abilities to some extent at a later point in the game can switch up the variety a good deal.
Yeah. Although I am reminded of what was it? Tactics Advance? Was that the one that had the, like...
Tactics Advance?
Yeah.
Oh, the judge system?
Yeah.
Where it's like, you can't use staves.
Yeah. What is a stave?
I had problems getting in. I'm not good at tactics games, and I'm good at tactics, but tactics games like Shining Force, there's a good one. I played the Game Boy Advance remake, Shining Force Resurrection of the Dark Dragon. A friend of mine is very big into Shining Force and said you should try this too. And I played it, and it's a fine game, but I myself did not enjoy playing it because of all of the various harshnesses around it of one of your characters died. So you can either afford to buy equipment to keep your other characters from dying or resurrect the one who got bopped. And you don't have any chance to go back and grind for anything. And I also kind of like to not lose half an hour to an hour of progress.
Yeah.
So going out and fighting a battle and getting to the last enemy and then getting wiped out and then doing it all over again, not really so enjoyable. But the game itself is fine. I personally am not the kind of gamer to appreciate that the most. That's my bit on Shining Force.
Actually, speaking of tactics games, one of my favorite games for the Super Nintendo, only released in Japan, was Front Mission, if anyone has played Front Mission.
I've played other Front Missions, not the original, but yeah.
Yeah, that was a tactics game that was robot-based, so...
I'm going to throw up my most hated, overrated game here. And I hate to continue in the vein of Square games, because I really would love to branch out to some other series, but, it's they are, sort of the hallmarks. Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, I hate Final Fantasy VII so
I
much.
despise Final Fantasy VII.
can't-
I think the characters. I think you get way too much melodrama. I think Sephiroth is an awful villain who is just a guy in a kilt that misquotes the Bible. I don't think it certainly hasn't held up graphically.
Yeah.
Not a lot from that era has, and Final Fantasy VII is definitely one of those. Music's neat. It's not bad. Battle system, is again, nothing to write home about there. The story is nothing to write home about, if you ask me. And the only good thing is the chocobo breeding, which is really messed up in and of itself because you're totally inbreeding chocobos.
That's the one part of the game where I completely avoided. I took one look at it and said, I'm going to feed you a nut, and you didn't grow into anything, so I'm walking away from this. I have so many other things to do with my life. I will groom Pokemon for the rest of my life because there will probably be more benefit from that in my overall enjoyment.
My brother played Final Fantasy VII, and he was the same way. And then I kind of took a look at the chocobo breeding and the chocobo racing. I was like, all right, yeah, this is pretty tight right here. I'll just do this. I'll let you do the rest, Matt.
Well, see, I have so many issues with Final Fantasy VII. I mean, I didn't really care about the story. I really hated the enemy design because all of the enemies are like, oh, it's a house that shoots rockets. Like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I'm in the desert and I'm fighting bouncing, spinning masks. Thank you. That is great. Like, class A enemy design there. But like, on the question of graphics and music, I always have to compare it to Breath of Fire 3, which came out in the same year. But even if you can say that the composition of the music in 7 was pretty good, the execution was terrible. It sounded horrible. The instrumentation that they had was bad. Whereas with Breath of Fire, again, it came out the same year, and both the graphics and the music were great. Like,
yeah,
there's, I just don't know why they decided to go full 3D.
Anna, Joe, you kids play Final Fantasy VII?
Well, I haven't played any Final Fantasy games, so I'm just kind of
me neither.
dividing my time.
Wow.
What?
I mean,
You should have like a
even
GameCola
like?
boot camp.
I played the first one before, but I only played like 20 minutes because I was completely lost, and I got to like the first boss. I made my way over to the first boss and like died immediately, and I was like, that wasn't really that much fun. I talked to a couple people. I battled some imps for a while. Like, I didn't just go straight there. I wandered around for a bit, battled imps for a while, went to the castle, and just all of my party was completely wiped out.
You're supposed to equip your sword before you fight anything, Joe.
Did I even have a sword? I don't know if I had a sword.
Okay,
I had a fighter.
and I'm also going to bring up that part of my dislike of 7 was the beginning, because as Nathaniel said, classic RPGs always have, make sure you equip your equipment after you buy it, or use keys to open doors. But then Final Fantasy VII was the beginning of, I'm going to talk to a random child in the weapons store, and he's going to tell me about the battle system for 15 minutes. And then they're going to ask me if I want to repeat that, and then I get to go out and like try to figure out what a materia is. It's like, it's not even that innovative. Like, at least with the Chrono Trigger differences of like there being lines and like shapes and like multi whatever, like those were intuitive and like they did make battle a bit more interesting. And this is just like Chrono Cross again with a stupid color thing. Like, it was the beginning of horrible, quote, creative battle systems.
I will say, because when I played Chrono Trigger, I missed the house that was supposed. I missed of all the house. I checked like every house, but I missed this one because I didn't realize it was like a separate area at the time. Just the way I was looking at the map. So I missed the house that was supposed to teach you about
active time battle.
How battling works.
Yeah.
And it was a bit difficult at first, but I don't even think I ever really went back to that house, and I had a pretty good idea of what I was doing.
Yeah.
I got the hang of it eventually. So even though it would have helped to have that first bit, which they included, I managed to figure out sort of how it worked. I might have missed a couple things, like formationing like setting up. I don't think I ever really planned around like how I was going to approach enemies. I just kind of ran into them and then hoped for the best.
Yeah.
But I might have missed some information there. But for the most part, I got through just fine without any of the tutorial stuff.
Yeah.
Now, as someone who played Final Fantasy, I believe 2012, they re-released it for PC with cloud saves at the end of 2011, and
Stop.
I picked. No, it's true, it's real. I picked that up, and they had achievements and things like that as well. But basically, the same game that was originally released, and so I played that for the first time. Must have been 2012, and coming late to the party, understanding that it is a game of its time period where a lot of the fan hype about it probably has to do with the nostalgia factor. Yeah. Still being able to filter that out, I enjoyed it. I've played Final Fantasy 1 through 8 plus Adventure plus Mystic Quest, and it's one of my... It's probably top 3 or top 4 of those, definitely in the upper tier of the games, because I'm all about the gameplay. Story is just the cherry on top of the whipped cream on top of the sundae that is the gameplay. So the fact that there was any kind of story whatsoever was just woohoo. I found it to be a little confusing and convoluted in parts. Sort of the relationship between Zack and Cloud and Sephiroth and time frames on some of these things. Yeah. And I think someone told me I missed a house with one person where I needed to talk to that explained half the plot. So it's kind of troublesome that you can just so easily miss a huge component of what's going on here. Yeah. But no, the gameplay I found to be solid. I enjoy the materia system, being able to switch out, some of the different abilities that you have. I think what helped to cement it in people's hearts at the time is that there was really no other video game, no other RPG that was that ambitious in terms of story for the PlayStation, as far as I'm aware, that also had graphics like that, because pointy, poke your eye out polygons were brand new and everybody loved them. And also it was a more adult story. Final Fantasy VI has a serious story, but Final Fantasy VII admittedly tries too hard to be for grown-ups. There's some slightly scandalous stuff in there. There's characters who use foul language. There's alcohol use, which previously got censored out. It's like, it's a game for grown-ups. It's so cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if I call,
Sid?
Or what's his face?
Sid.
The Barrett.
Oh, Barrett?
I thought Barrett.
No,
Barrett's weird cursing.
No, Sid was the one who constantly in every single sentence had a censored, however they censored it, because they censored it, didn't they? Did they replace it with the stars or something?
I don't remember whether they did, and they might have changed it for the version that I played.
Okay.
But I do remember it deliberately trying to be a grittier game than the Final Fantasies that preceded it, on top of being fairly serious, with a sense of humor that occasionally came out, sometimes awkwardly. But the game overall, I didn't mind strange enemies in the middle of the desert. It was just fruity, colorful things that got thrown at me as cannon fodder. The issues that I did have with it, though, were all of the the quick time events and all of the mini games that were injected into the middle of the game, where you didn't have any preparation whatsoever. There was really no practice. It was just, we assume that you've played this game before and know how to get past that. And all of a sudden you're missing things that you can only get in this one spot if you do it right the first time.
Yeah.
And then I throw my hands up in the air and say, well, this isn't fun anymore. Yeah. And then I go back to bashing things. I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of like this game. And then they make me march in a parade. And I'm like, I hate this again.
Yeah, suddenly you're riding a motorcycle.
The motorcycle was fine because that was more like other video games that I'm halfway decent at. But the, sort of the WarioWare Mario Party mini games that they threw on there, what was it? Breathalyze is not the word that I'm looking for. Resuscitate. Resuscitate the person who's drowned on the beach.
Yeah.
Not breathalyze.
Breathatize.
Yes.
Oxygenate.
So overall, I I enjoy Final Fantasy VII. I don't think it's radically wonderful, but for the time it was something new and different, and I can totally see where people have a soft spot for it and can overlook some of the issues. And I actually like a lot of the characters in that more than a lot of the other Final Fantasy games. And I don't know if it's because I don't know that they're any more developed than some of the other ones, but they interact with each other better, I think, than some of the at least previous Final Fantasy characters do.
Yeah, I guess that point is true. I mean, in 6 there was moderate amounts of character interaction, but excluding story points like Sabin and Edgar or whatever, or Locke and Celis, you didn't really get too much outside of depending on who was in your party, you would get a few different statements about the exact situation that was happening at the moment.
Well, and that's another one of the things that sold me about Chrono Trigger is depending on your party makeup, you will get different dialogue fairly frequently from them. But what's so clever about it is it's not just some random line that they say because they're in the party, but the script is structured in such a way that depending on who you have, it still sounds like the conversation is flowing naturally.
Yeah.
Even though they've, replaced one person with another person. Like when you first meet Isla, I remember there being a little bit of banter about remarking on her appearance and saying, what are you? I'm a robot, raw boot, what this rubbish, things like that. And there's real interaction, and it feels like a different conversation depending on who you have. But the core of it is still the same basic words that are there to set up what the characters are about to say. I thought that was great. But Paper Mario, not so great.
Okay, and when you
are we gonna move into Paper Mario? Because I can talk about Paper Mario.
Because I've never actually played Paper Mario, but I do hate some Super Mario RPG.
Which one?
All right, now you're all killing me.
Oh wait, I can't do Super Mario RPG. Let's go Paper Mario.
I can let you guys talk about Paper Mario. I can sit this one out.
All right, Nathaniel, make your case. Your case.
Go ahead and tell us why you're wrong.
All right. So I admit going into this that I love Super Mario RPG, one of my top favorite games of all time, one of my top RPGs of all time. Very much enjoyed it and continue to enjoy it when I play it sometimes. And when I saw Paper Mario, my expectation was Super Mario RPG 2. So I went into it thinking it was going to be something that it completely was not. And there's one thing that I found over and over and over again is that if you have bad expectations going into a game, you're not going to judge it fairly. So I am willing to concede that I've only played it once. It was years ago, and my opinions may be null and void. But
is this the first Paper Mario you're talking about?
Yeah, the first Paper Mario. I have no experience whatsoever with any of the sequels, just the original N64 Paper Mario.
1000 Year Door, the GameCube Paper Mario, is super tight.
And I've heard good things about it, but there's not enough from one to even begin to encourage me to go into the second one. So you've got a bunch of random sidekicks who are just a Goomba, a Koopa Troopa, whatever, just some random enemy. They're not real characters that are wholly unique to your journey. So it's Mario and a bunch of thugs.
Mario has a whole family of little Goombas.
Okay, and do they all come adventuring along with you? Because if that were the case, then maybe I'd have liked it more. But then you've also got the leveling up system where there's a cap, and you suddenly can't level up anymore, and you don't realize this initially. So you start to maneuver Mario's stats in a certain direction, and then you can't do anything anymore. And if you didn't level him well enough, or if the battles are particularly difficult, there's nothing you can do because you've reached that ceiling. You can't grind to get a little bit better, which for something that's ostensibly like a more kid-friendly RPG, that's a really big problem where you just suddenly you're getting better and getting better, and you're improving, you're getting stronger, you're beating up monsters better, and then you stop until you get to the next section. And that was just frustrating as all get out to me.
Super Mario RPG has a level cap, too. It's 30. It's always 30.
Oh, at the very end of the game, but I'm talking about each section until you beat the boss of that chapter or whatever they called it. You cannot level up past a certain point for that chapter.
Well, I mean, that you could say that's good or bad depending on how you look at it. It's bad if you're absolutely awful at the game and you need to grind. It's good if you want to preserve some sense of challenge to the game.
Because in in Paper Mario, was it possible to is that one of the games where if you time your dodging correctly, you won't take any damage?
Right,
Correct.
or you reduce your damage, yeah.
Okay. Because I know in the Mario and Luigi series, which was sort of after Superstar Saga, it kind of split off into Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi. In Mario and Luigi, I know, particularly why I like it is, it's not even just reducing damage. If you dodge correctly, you will not take any damage at all. And so leveling becomes more of something to help you if you are to make up for your lack of skill. But if you have skill, then you don't need to level. Paper Mario kind of does that too. Again, I'm not super familiar with the first one as much, but Paper Mario focuses a lot more on trying to incorporate that mechanic of know how to block or dodge and figure that out, and that's a big part of figuring out how you're going to approach the game and where a lot of the game challenge comes from, rather than leveling. And I think they almost want you to focus on that. They don't want you to power through this game. They want you to develop skills and become good at the dodging and the blocking, because that's sort of their core. That's their thing that's unique. This is what makes our game different in a lot of ways from a lot of other games. And so if you could just, and again, I don't know if this is necessarily good, but like I said, if you wanted to play it the way you wanted to, that's totally fair. Yeah, it does hamper that, but it seems to me that the way, if they were trying to keep things focused on their fancy mechanic, that is a precaution that they take, because it had to be a deliberate decision. It's not like the numbers worked out, so it gets to the point where it's almost ridiculous for you to try to grind in the same area anymore. They cut it off, and now it's like saying, all right, this is as much leeway we're going to give you. You have to get good to progress.
I don't remember there being... in Super Mario RPG, I got very good with the timed hits. I don't remember that being very prominent in Paper Mario. And again, it's been years since I played this, but I'm struggling even to remember what the combat system was like, because so much of it just felt forgettable to me. It's just, okay, do this thing, move on to the next area. And beyond the gameplay, I was not thrilled with the aesthetics. Like, I don't mind kiddie graphics, I don't mind simple graphics, the paper thing didn't work for me. It felt weird because there was no real connection to Mario or any aspect of the Mario universe that seemed to lend itself well to paper, so it was sort of an odd choice. But also the N64 graphics, which were, again, poke your eye out polygons with some of this flat 2D stuff on there, hasn't aged well. And I played this a lot later on after it first came out. And the music just was grating to me. Maybe you like it, but just everything about the music was either completely forgettable or just sort of make it stop, please, let's get on to the next section. There were 2 or 3 tunes that I kind of liked.
You know what game you would hate?
Paper Mario.
Well, Sticker Star in particular.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't like Sticker Star.
Sticker Star, you know how you say you didn't like that there was a point where you got to a level cap? Sticker Star starts you out with a level cap. There's no leveling in Sticker Star. You just get items to attack with, and those items, because you get, like, the Sticker Star's whole thing is you collect stickers from beating enemies. And so as you go through the game, more powerful enemies will give you more powerful stickers. So there's no self-leveling up. You are completely bound to the game there.
But see, that's more like Mega Man Battle Network, which I've played through the first 2. I'm in the middle of the 3rd one right now. So I've gotten used to that mentality of, well, you don't really level up. You just get better equipment, or you get a wider array of attacks that you can choose from. And that's fine, because that's all about strategy. That's all about tactics. And the other side of that, where you're leveling up and you just, you grind until you're good enough to get through the section, that's fine too, because there is that option to grind if you're not good enough at the regular gameplay, or as a strategy to say, I want to power myself at a certain level to get through here. Whereas Paper Mario, compromise between the two, and I don't feel compromised particularly well, because I wasn't doing all that much grinding before it capped me off and said, no, yo dog, you need to deal with this right now and man up and fight it. You know, I'm like, well, no, you've taken the joy out of running around beating stuff up, but you haven't given me enough motivation to learn how to fight these things with the abilities that I have, because you still occasionally do let me level up.
I will argue still that Sticker Star does a really bad job of it, because you guys constant feed of stuff. Like, you're never lacking in anything. You always have the best equipment available to you as if you're playing the game. And also blocking, like, saves you from 1 damage point instead of like, halving it or like 75%ing it, which I think it does in some of the other games. In the other games, it's a lot more prominent blocking. In that game, it does. I don't like Sticker Star a lot. I thought it was very boring.
I also remember Paper Mario moving very slowly. I felt like it took forever to get me from one side of the screen to the next, even with the little whirlwind spinny do that you can do. So it really dragged on a number of levels for me. But Mike seems to like it.
I do.
I never
Mike
had
likes
any.
it.
I never had that sort of feeling in Thousand Year Door. I think everything was very condensed in Thousand Year Door. It was very, if we're gonna make you fight, you're in this little room. That's all you got to do. There weren't like big wide open areas as much. Which I'm not super familiar with the first Paper Mario. But I guess when I played Thousand Year Door, which I think does have the level cap, maybe it's a bit more lenient with that level cap in terms of you can get a bit more powerful. But I do remember encountering it. But it never really was a problem. I always felt like I had grinded sufficiently, and that I could ground sufficiently, and that I could move forward, and that I never felt hindered by a level cap. I guess I never felt like I got to that point. And maybe that's a difference between the two games. Maybe they worked that better. It's weird though, because I've never heard that complaint before, and I wonder why that's the case. Because I feel like, if you were playing, Pokemon and you couldn't get above level 10, you couldn't get Pokemon level 10, and the gym leader has level 12 and 13, then that would be incredibly frustrating. So
yeah, I disagree. I think if you do it right, it preserves the challenge of the game, because one thing I'll do, and sometimes I can't help myself from doing it, is grinding until the game possesses no more challenge for me, and then I just kind of go through the rest of the game, and yeah, it is fun in a way where I murder everything, but at the same time, it's at that point I'm just going through the motions. There's nothing there that really challenges me, and I'm beating it just to say that I've beaten it. So I guess it all depends on your playstyle, really, because I totally do get what you're saying about level caps being frustrating, and wanting to be able to, if you're having a rough time, to get a few more levels to go through. I mean, Pokemon is a prime example of that. If you're having trouble with any of the gym leaders, just go level up. I mean, you can beat Brock with a Charmander with that tactic.
Yeah.
You can beat Brock. You can beat Brock with a Magikarp. You can beat the Elite Four with a level 100 Magikarp.
Can you even get a Magikarp by the time that you get to Brock, though?
You cannot. But you can beat the Elite Four with level 100 Magikarp. It's that powerful.
It's because that's because of flail. That there's a trick to that.
Yeah,
I will concede to Magikarp users.
But I mean, you're 40 levels higher than them, so that means you're going to win.
You couldn't use a level 100 Kakuna that you caught in the wild, because it only knows Harden.
No, well, yeah, if you catch it in the wild, which you never do, you always evolve it from a Weedle, so at least it knows Tackle. Duh.
What if it's a Nuzlocke? What if you're catching it and that's the first one you run into? Then what do?
Then you put it in your Pokebox and never touch it again. You get a Weedle, goddammit. Get all my level.
We've gone off track.
I mean, Pokemon's an RPG, so not really.
It is.
We could move to Pokemon if we're done with Paper Mario.
Something I can talk about.
Yeah.
Pokemon.
And that way we don't need to hear Jetty bash Super Mario RPG, because we'll talk about Pokemon instead.
Pokemon is not overrated in the least. It is amazing, and we all should play it and love it and use it as a model for world peace.
Where we capture poor defenseless animals and make them do our bidding for.
It's interesting how they've been addressing that recently, where they're kind of getting to the point. It's like, yeah, it's kind of weird that people capture them in balls. So we're gonna do more about how Pokemon are friends, and actually Pokemon who battle are healthier than Pokemon who don't battle. They've actually said that in the games, so you can allay any fears that you're actually mistreating.
They are animals bred for war.
I mean, Pokemon are just people that speak a different language and have immense powers that makes you wonder why the hell they aren't running the show, and the naked pink monkeys are their servants. A Charizard can melt you. That is a thing.
Is anyone here going to make an argument that Pokemon is overrated? Because if they're not, then there's no point in talking.
It's so weird. Like, what can we say that's negative about Pokemon? Like, I mean, because there is an extent of.
There's always like one or two things in each game that they bork up,
Yeah.
and usually it has to deal with online battling.
I will say that the first one is the first generation games, at least Red and Blue. I mean, I've played Blue, and the first ones, at least with the perspective of going back to them, are like a mess when it comes.
They're ludicrously buggy. I mean,
That's where my experience lies, because I played through half maybe of Pokemon Red. I got to Safari Zone, however far in the game that is, and I was enjoying it well enough. I thought it was another RPG, and I saw that there were a lot of things that I could be doing, that I could be obsessing about, but I chose not to, because I can be obsessive about things, but it was not catching me enough to be obsessive. And then I get to Safari Zone, and I have the right kind of Pokeballs and all of the things outside and inside the Safari Zone. I am no longer able to catch. It won't, and I'm holding like up A or whatever it was that you're supposed to do to make sure you catch them. Nothing was
that's
happening.
not actually a thing.
Safari.
Yeah, I know. But it ceased being physically capable of catching any Pokemon. And I said, you know what? I don't gotta catch them all. And then I went off and played something else.
Yeah, the Safari Zone is a rude awakening. Especially when you get in there, it's like, oh man, all these rare Pokemon, and they're all just running away from me. Oh man, a Scyther, that's a badass bug with sides for hands and looks awesome, and that's the fourth one that's run away on me.
I'm not particularly fond of the Safari Zone.
So the Pokemon games are very good at building on previous flaws and deficiencies, but they tend to introduce one or two new ones every generation because of that. Gives them...
Keeping you up, Mike?
Yeah, sorry. I got a baby, man. Come on. Give me a break here. By the way, it's been very good. Thank you, Connor. He's asleep right on the other side of the room. Now, they always have a couple deficiencies, which they tend to fix, but then they introduce a couple more. Trying to think of what they did wrong in X and Y. I think someone was complaining about battling, and just
the EXP all is completely broken.
I love it.
I think it's great.
I used it, and I was completely, I got completely overpowered incredibly quickly.
Then
there
turn
was
it off.
Yeah, I did, but the damage had already been done. I was already. But I'm not gonna just abandon my strong Pokemon. The whole point of the game is they constantly tell you you're supposed to like your Pokemon, use the Pokemon that you like, and keep using them, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. That's the whole game. They tell you that.
All right. Well, you had poor experience with it, but I think the XBL is an amazing addition for people who don't want to spend all day grinding, and people, they might be more casual players. And Pokemon XY sort of opens the experience. All opens the door to them and says listen, we know this game can be tough at points. We know, maybe you aren't totally versed in all the intricacies of Pokemon, because I could name you pretty much all the ways to beat a certain type of Pokemon. I could name you their best moves. I could probably name you most of their stats, at least give you a ballpark area and their abilities and which ability is the best. And experience all for me is completely unnecessary, and that's fine. But if I'm trying to bring my kid, or oh god, someday bring Vanjie into playing Pokemon, something like the XP all is what's going to keep her there long enough for her to get to the good parts and not get bored with grinding.
And what is that exactly for somebody who has heard of Pokemon?
Apologize. Okay, so there's so you can equip items on your Pokemon in the past, and typically, like in Red and Blue, you would have to, if you wanted to gain experience for a Pokemon, you would have to use them in battle. And if you're trying to level up a weak Pokemon, maybe you'd throw them out there first and then instantly bring them back for a stronger Pokemon.
I remember that.
Yeah, super annoying, right?
It's super annoying.
Yeah.
That's most of the reason I didn't get very far in Emerald.
And that's fine. And so there's another. So when they introduced the ability for Pokemon to hold items, they introduced an item called Experience Share. And what Experience Share does is that you put it on a Pokemon, and that Pokemon gets some of the experience from every battle fought. And it is instead of throwing them out there every time, it's a way for them to get some experience. In Pokemon X and Y, they pretty much said, okay, we know that constantly grinding and switching out Pokemon is a pretty big pain in the butt. So they give you an item. It's an experience. It's called Experience All. You can turn it on and off. It doesn't have to be equipped on a Pokemon. And when it's in use, basically all the Pokemon in the fight will get 100% of the experience, and then every other Pokemon in the party will get experience equal to 50% of what the main Pokemon earned. And it is
so they're basically catching up with half the other RPGs out there.
Exactly, yes.
But
Wonderful.
My argument, I like, I'm not against the idea of the EXP and it helping, but I feel like also in X and Y, they also made it a lot easier. Like, even if I didn't use the EXP in X and Y in particular, I would not have had to grind as much as I usually do in Pokemon games. So it seemed like they kind of, when they did both, they made it so that A, you didn't have to grind, and also made it really easy to grind. It felt like it got out of control for me. And maybe this is just a personal thing, but it felt like it got out of control way too fast.
It sounds like you were paralyzed by freedom.
Perhaps. It just, I didn't play with the EXP all for very long, and all of a sudden I just felt I soared past where I felt like I was supposed to be. And maybe that's just because I've become very good at economizing experience over the years. But that was just my personal thing. That's just me. That I will concede that is a more of a personal thing, that I prefer there to be a bit more challenge. But if Nintendo wants, and it's, X and Y have sold wonderfully and are great for all ages as much as any other Pokemon game, if not more. So that's fine. But I'm going to be a curmudgeon-y old fan and want my challenge.
Well, I mean, you can have your challenge. You just turn off the experience all.
The thing I like about it is I try to be overpowered before I face a gym leader, because I absolutely hate backtracking. And, I'm lazy, so I really like it. That means I don't have to go back and then come back to the gym, go back and try and level up more, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm busy these days, very busy. And I love the experience all because it allows me more time to do the things I like in Pokemon, which is battle and, kind of get to the post-game where I can, start really training up Pokemon to fight my friends with. And I don't have to worry so much about grinding. It's great for if you don't have a ton of time on your hands to grind anymore. And it's good to have doors open for just various types of players, I think. And I mean, I'm gonna be blunt. I mean, if you don't like it, you can turn it off.
Definitely, that will be the case for repeated playthroughs. I just personally, I agree with you. If you don't like it, turn it off, which is what I did. But I don't know. I felt like it was it didn't become clear to me that it was a problem until it was too late and there wasn't any going back. And again, maybe it was personal. Personally, what I would what I would want, and maybe this is unfair of me to request of the designers, but for it to be more clear whether or not you need EXP all before it gets to the point where you've gotten to the point where you can take out entire gyms with one of your Pokemon, which is what happened to me for a lot of the game, and I found myself not needing to incorporate any strategy long after I had stopped using EXP all.
That's such a hard thing to balance in video games, though.
I know, and
because
again,
there are especially when you've got all of these different moves, all of these different characters, party members, in whatever form they may take, of trying to anticipate what are people likely to do, what is fair, what is fun, and what's something completely random that people might try, and are we accommodating for it? I mean, it's harder and harder as RPGs get more complex, and I'm impressed with anything that's able to still deliver any kind of a consistent experience with so many options.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying that they should have. I'm just saying that if they were to cater to me personally, that's what they would have had to do. And that is probably an unreasonable thing for me to request, but it still affected my experience with the game. So I feel justified in bringing it up, if nothing else.
There we go. Anna, do you have any RPGs that you want to shout about or make us defend?
Okay, so I had to look up a list of RPGs because I know I've played them before, but for some reason I had no idea what they were. And the only one I can really think, besides Pokemon, that I've actually played like a lot is Oblivion.
Ooh,
my
Elder
God.
Scrolls. Now we're going somewhere.
Overrated. Oh my God, I hate
Yeah,
it with
I don't.
burning passion of 1,000 white hot suns.
Thanks.
Oh God, this game was hyped to me for years and years and years, and I finally tried it. I want to say a couple years back, and I love Fallout 3. I love New Vegas. Although I will argue that Bethesda, for their in-house stuff, really can't write, because the ending to Fallout 3 is atrocious, and a lot of the other characters just feel so flat in that game. And then so then I get to Oblivion, and everyone's like, oh, it's just open world. You get to make the character the way you want, and it's like, this is awful. I mean, first off, the making your character the way you want is through this weird skill level up system where you just have to start jumping across the countryside if you want to get your jump up, and you just have to crawl everywhere if you want to get your crawl up.
Yeah.
And the leveling up system of the Elder Scroll games, I haven't played them yet, and I really need to, but I need to find a time where I can have hours of my life eaten up before
you level up in the Elder Scrolls game.
I've seen people play it. It doesn't make any sense to me. Just if
you're trying to level up your sneak, just hit the crouch button.
Yeah, that's all you
put
have
a
to
rubber
do.
band on the control. No, just put a rubber band on the control stick.
Yeah.
And just have it sneak be walking into a corner for 2 hours and just go make yourself a sandwich, shower, maybe read a book, and come back, and you'll be thoroughly leveled up. And then there's the level scaling, which level scaling is just something I hate in almost all its forms, where if you end up leveling up quickly, the guys in the first area of the game, they'll start out with leather armor, but by the time you've been playing for a few hours, they'll have friggin' dragon demon glass equipment. It's like, these are just level 1 moves. They should not have this type of thing. It's really frustrating, and it's such cliche Tolkien fantasy that it's I might as well be playing Lord of the Rings first person, because it's all they just regurgitated a generic fantasy book, really. There wasn't anything that was that intriguing for me. I hear Skyrim is better. I haven't played Skyrim, but because I value my time and I'm not about to be tricked again. But yeah, Oblivion is so overrated in my opinion.
I think most of the Elder Scrolls games are kind of overrated, but the thing, I had a different experience from you said that it was overhyped for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had heard nothing about this game. my boyfriend at the time, he's like, here, you should play this. And then he kind of just gave me a copy and I played it and I liked it. But all I did, like, since I had so much time on my hands, I just kind of walked around and that's all I did. And he's just like, oh yeah, it's so great. I'm just like, I've been walking around picking flowers and making potions. That's all I've been doing.
I can only speak for Morrowind and a little bit of Daggerfall, Elder Scrolls 2, which I was able to download for free because they were giving away 1 and 2 for free on the actual publisher's website. So I tried 2 after playing 3 and found that huge randomly generated RPG world the size of Western Europe is not the best idea in the world. Because every place looks basically the same, and it takes a long time to get there. Yeah. So, did not give that one too terribly long. Also, the controls were a little funky for me. Just the combination of the keyboard and mouse to get everything to work right was a little clumsy. And it's hard going back. I don't mind older graphics. Like, I grew up on the NES. I grew up on the Atari, really. So, I am no stranger to old, simple, basic graphics, but at the same time, it was really tough to go back to sprites walking around 3D mazes attacking you, rather than fully 3D things. So I had a couple issues with that. Elder Scrolls 3, though, everybody's read my Morrowind review, right, on our actual internet website?
Oh, yeah!
Right? Okay.
Was a thing that you...
Yeah, it was a thing. That was 10 months of my life went into that thing. But they were great.
10 months, yeah. Woo!
Yeah. So I played it a little bit on my roommate had it at college. And I played for, I don't know, an hour or two. I took the Silt Strider to Balmora, wandered around a little bit, but got enough of a taste of it that said, okay, this is really big and vast. I want to sit down and give this the time it deserves. And then years later, I got myself a copy of it and the 2 expansions and sat down and played through all of it. And there's plenty of side quests that I missed. And honestly, I just enjoyed playing it as a sandbox. I, every once in a while, nudged the main plot line so that I went and found out stuff here in the ruins and then delivered this thing to that guy and then went through the Ghost Gate and did all these different things. And the plot really did not matter to me all that much. And the graphics have aged pretty well, and the music is still beautiful. There's not nearly as much music as there needs to be. I don't know if you can hear my wife blah-blah-blahing in the background there. She's been playing it as well. So gorgeous soundtrack, not nearly enough music, but still gorgeous. And the customizability of it, I loved. It took me forever to figure out things. Like I was sort of blindly crafting my character into, I thought, oh, I've played No One Lives Forever. I'll be stealthy and sneaky, and ended up just beating everybody over the head with a hammer. So I did not craft my character well, and I certainly was not able to power level, and any of the scaled leveling, like all of that was just completely over my head. I enjoyed hopping around like a madman across the countryside with a big giant mallet in my hand, whacking rats and stealing people's pillows. It was the best thing in the world, and I could play it whatever way I wanted. I could be a terrible person. I could be a noble hero. I could just be a good-for-nothing layabout. And I had a great time because I was not holding myself to any particular method of playing it. And and my wife says no standards with my asparagus hat because the glass helmet does kind of look like asparagus. So I had a blast with that. I really did. And I can't speak for Oblivion or Skyrim even, but 3 was enough to inspire me to try and play the others someday. I want to go back to something that, unless somebody else has something to say.
I was just going to go to Super Mario RPG if we were done with Elder Scrolls.
Oh, okay, yeah, why don't we do that?
Oh, I mean, were you going to say something?
No, I was going to go on to a completely different game altogether, but this is a good time to do that.
Oh, okay. So Super Mario RPG...
You're wrong.
I remember being very excited with Super Mario RPG and being like, man, this is, how weird, like, they're gonna take Mario and, like, make it into an RPG, and I hated it from the beginning. Like, the only neat thing that I liked was the, like, tap to jump again and jump again and jump again and that kind of thing.
So like playing Mario.
Kind of.
Well, Jenny, to be fair, your heart is a black shriveled lump of coal that can know no joy or love in your eyes. I think that's important context for saying that you don't like Super Mario RPG.
The graphics were terrible, and I hated this
Graphics are great!
stupid the marshmallow guy, Cloud.
Mallow! He's Prince of the Cloud Kingdom. Spoiler, sorry. He's great!
I just didn't.
Gino's great!
No!
Bowser's great in that. Oh, I love Bowser in there.
Like, okay,
Peach is great.
I kind of liked, you're playing as Mario and like Bowser and whatever, but then they introduced like the stupid sword guy who I didn't care about.
Because you need to have an overarching, because the players in the Mario universe, they're players. They act out, their daily lives on sort of a stage for us to play through. That's why they have Super Mario Brothers 3 and Mario rescuing Peach from Bowser. Then they're all together playing board games, or all together racing. But then you have an outside force that comes into the Mushroom Kingdom and messes everything up. And so suddenly everyone that's, typically they've got their own little groove going on, they have to band together to get rid of this invading force. And it's exemplified by Smithy, who's bringing actual weapons into the Mushroom Kingdom that heretofore the only thing that they really have is hammers. He's bringing swords and axes and bows and arrows. And
they had boomerangs. Let's give them credit. Hammers and boomerangs.
Hammers and boomerangs, fine. They're blunt weapons though. They're not stabby weapons. I mean, these are things that cause slashing wounds and blood and gore and whatever, not just you thwack someone on the head. They're not cartoon weapons. And it's amazing. The music is great. The graphics are great. All the various things you can discover in the game are great. Albeit the trying to find
that one red essence.
No, I was gonna say the casino is a pain in the butt. But
I found it completely by accident. I'm like, oh hey, I won this thing. Great.
And
then they let me in.
I just hate the pre-rendered 3D graphics.
But that's still a personal preference, because the graphics themselves are still very highly detailed, and as far as pre-rendered graphics go, they are very nice. If you don't like the style, different story altogether.
Are they though? I mean, I just...
They are.
Okay, separate question. Donkey Kong Country series.
Still didn't really like it.
Okay, so you don't like pre-rendered graphics.
So you're a Philistine.
Because if you said Donkey Kong Country had awesome graphics, but Mario RPG is terrible, then we've got a problem on our hands, because...
We have a dirty hypocrite.
Yeah, I guess I just don't like...
Okay, so you don't like the graphical style.
Right.
That's fair.
And
that's not a fair criticism of the game, but that's a fair reason for not liking it.
And I guess I just didn't care about the story. So you're playing as Mario, but most of the stuff about the story has nothing to do really with Mario.
I mean, it's fluffy. I mean, Mario is not, it's not really meant to have this amazing, huge backstory.
Yeah, but
I will say, I haven't played it, but I haven't played this. It's not Super Star.
What are you doing with your time, man?
Playing Pokemon, probably. 7 stars. I've seen a playthrough of it though, and I will admit that in comparison to other Mario RPGs, again, from what I remember,
this is the one and only Mario RPG. The others are Paper Mario. Get it straight.
Well, there's also Superstar Saga, but they're not,
Well,
the Mario, but other games in the series that play more into sort of exploring the Mario world with storytelling a bit more. I can see, I think I can see where Jay's sort of coming from, where with an RPG, you get the chance to, explore Mario with a story that isn't possible in the other games. You can't, there isn't really story in the other games. But in this, we would have the opportunity to really see, how do these characters talk to each other? What, how does this all work? And I feel like from what I've seen of 7 Stars and what I've played of the other games, the other Mario RPG games like Paper Mario and the Mario and Luigi series especially, really play up sort of how the Mario world works, and what you're doing has a lot to do with the established Mario world. Whereas 7 stars. And again, I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing, but it is definitely much more focused on bringing in this other into the Mario world, and that's sort of what everything is about. And so you've got these characters, you've got this puppeting cloud that aren't referenced in anything else, and they come in and they can be cool characters. But if someone is approaching it from the idea of I really want to see the Mario world come to life in a new way, you're just sort of getting, well, what's this thing? Yeah. What's that thing? These aren't things.
Right, and I can actually support Jetty a little bit. Again, still love Mario RPG, but when I first played it, I said, "Oh, great! Mario, Mushroom Kingdom, Princess, all of this stuff is. Who is this fluffball? Who is this wooden doll come to life? Like, where is this look?" I wanted it to be the Mario universe I knew and loved come to life as an RPG, and you only sort of get that. You get a completely different story of other characters who, at first, I was not invested in. I thought Mallow was whiny. Gino was, sort of stiff. I mean, he is made of wood, but I mean, just the character was. I was not getting into it the first time through, in part because of my expectations being what they were of, I want Mario and then when, Bowser comes into the picture and when the princess comes into the picture later, then things start to get more interesting for me. But going back on subsequent playthroughs, now that I know what to understand, now that I know what to expect from the game, I look at it as this is a story that happens to take place in the Mario universe. And if you look at the gameplay, because again, it's always back to the gameplay with me, it does a very successful job of translating what makes the Mario platformers so compelling into RPG format, because you've got a lot of the iconic enemies. You've got Goombas, you've got Hammer Brothers, you've got Piranha Plants, you've got a lot of the items. You have the mallet, sort of like going back to Donkey Kong, Mario's appearance there. You've got the invincibility stars. You've got, running around. It's not random battles that just show up on a map. Like Chrono Trigger, you've got enemies you can run into, and you just see them down there. And you can jump on them. You can jump around. So you've still got the platforming side of it. And there are some platforming challenges on top of the RPGs. Even in the battles, you are still doing platforming when you're, like you said, Jetty, hitting the button to jump on them again. Yeah. You're using fireballs to take them out like you would. I mean, there's so many touchstones of the Mario games. It's all there, but they had to add so much more to it to expand an almost non-existent universe into something that felt substantial enough to warrant, 20, 30, 40 hours, however long it takes to get through it. I call it Mega Man X Command Mission Syndrome, because Command Mission, another RPG adaptation of a platform series, throws you into a game, and you've got X and you've got 0, and you're like, oh yeah, X, oh yeah, 0, I'm so on board with this. And then they take 0 away from you, and then you spend the next 20 hours saying, I want 0 back, because I came in here to play Mega Man 0 Command Mission. And if you do that, you're completely overlooking the actual world that they're building, all of these different characters who have their own backstories, their own interesting abilities, and their own character traits, and all of these different things, because all you really wanted out of the game was this one thing. You didn't come into it and say, I'm going to have an adventure in the Mario universe. Let's see where it takes me.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that it's your guys' fault that you don't like it, and the game is amazing.
But I don't know if should it really be, how much is it the fault of the player to go into a game with certain expectations? I mean, to a certain extent, but like, all right, I'm gonna make a comparison, and it might be completely out there. So bear with me. Say you were going to go to what you thought was a fancy dinner, and you were like, you got, maybe not super fancy, but like, you got in, a polo shirt, some khaki pants, and you get to the thing, and suddenly it's this wild party. It's way more casual than you thought it was going to be. It was, people are wearing t-shirts and jeans. There's lights flashing, there's blaring music. Now, even if you would have liked that kind of party, and maybe personally with me, it's like going in with the expectation of this is going to be this sort of thing, is it really fair that you don't like it because you came here for something. I came to this because I wanted to have a nice dinner with people, and that's not what I'm getting. Even if this thing could be enjoyable, that's not what I came here for. If you want me to do this, you need to lead me there. Maybe not lead me, but I need to come there with that mentality, and you can't just tell me what mentality to have when approaching the game.
Well, to keep going along with your analogy, it's what kind of information do you have going into it? Does someone say, this is going to be the greatest party ever, and they sell it like some sort of, wild and crazy raucous party, or do you not hear anything about it, and it's just, hey, party at my place? And then you use your own personal experience to interpret what party means and how to dress.
Mario Party.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's tough because, especially with the games that we're talking about, some of us have come back to them after years after their release, or played them immediately or in the general time period when everybody else was playing them for the first time, and expectations of yesteryear and expectations of today can be so completely different that, it doesn't matter when you played it, it's what did your particular expectations at the time happen to be relative to what the game actually was.
And I do want to say a few things about expectations, and basically, if it wasn't Super Mario RPG and you still had the weird pre-rendered 3D graphics, you had the same music, the same level of game, but instead of being Mario, it was, Marcus or something, like it was just a character, and it wasn't released.
Mark RPG.
Yeah, Super Mark RPG. Like, if it was just a game, I just wonder how many people...
Super John Smith, The Incredible Adventure.
Yeah, fights with a sword from space that randomly appears in his land and starts handing out weapons. I don't know, like, the same thing with Chrono Trigger. I guess I feel like with Chrono Trigger, part of basically, Squaresoft had built up its reputation to the point that people were expecting it to be a good game, and I wonder if it had been released not by Square Enix but by somebody else, if it would have gotten the same reception that like Lufia 2 or Illusion of Gaia got, which they are considered good games, but they're not quite on the same level, like they're not raised to the same pedestal that Chrono Trigger is.
Well, as I recall, my first exposure to Chrono Trigger was at a friend's house. Friend's dad was playing through it, and I sat in, and I'm like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
I want this game. And then got excited about it because I had heard nothing about it. Nobody else talked about it. I had just seen gameplay and said, I want this game.
Yeah.
And then eventually I got this game, and then I played through it, and I loved it. And this was well before everybody was all on the internet, leaving their opinions left and right and hyping it up. And this is before I had... Actually, this was when I had friends. And we could talk about things like this and get hyped up. So there was really little or no outside influence aside from that initial exposure to the game. And I still fell in love with it the way other people have independently of each other.
Because for me, what I remember was I had grown up, I had played Final Fantasy II, I had played Final Fantasy III, I had played Secret of Mana, and I was like, man, Square really makes the best games, like all these RPGs with these great stories like Secret of Mana, man. And so when my brother brought in Chrono Trigger, which he was borrowing from a friend, and I loaded it up one Saturday morning, and I played without saving it from...
Well, that's just poor idea.
Well, okay, because it was my brother's friend's copy, so I was like, well, I'm not going to save over anything. There's an open save slot, but I feel like I shouldn't. So then, I played it, and I got to where you meet Robo.
That's pretty far in without saving.
Yeah, and then my brother finally comes out. I started at 6 a.m. and then at 10 or 11, my brother comes out and he's like, "Oh, why are you playing my game?" And he turned it off, and yeah, that was my introduction.
And then you hated Chrono Trigger forever.
No, I really loved Chrono Trigger back when I played it the original time. But I guess on subsequent playthroughs, I'm like, I can't stand these characters. And even though I feel like a lot of late SNES games had too much effort put into the instruments for the music, like the composition is good, but they like add all this like echo and like they're trying to make it sound like real instruments, and it ended up sounding weird, like I guess Uncanny Valley with instruments. Just like has anyone played Tales of Fantasia?
Nope. Played Tales of Symphonia with my wife.
No, I have
Oh,
not.
a lovely game.
Our nickname for it was Tales of Neverending. We enjoyed it for a while, and then it didn't end.
Because
Still enjoyed it, but...
Tales of Fantasia was another game that I didn't play it until like way late on an emulator. I mean, it was never released in the States, but even as far as emulation goes, like I was playing emulated games in like 1998, and I didn't play this one until like 2004, 2006, something like that. And I can't stand the music in that game. Like everything has like echo on it, and that was another game that I complain was overblown and they tried way too hard. And even though the graphics are good and like they had a cool battle system where it was like a side-scrolling action battle, I don't know if the later games are like that, but it seemed cool at first, and then after the first like hour of gameplay it's like, this is a nightmare.
I think Jetty just wanted to use this podcast as a forum to complain about Chrono Trigger.
Well,
I think so.
But what I guess I'm saying is that if it wasn't a Squaresoft game, I'm not sure that I would have gone in with the same expectations of like, this is going to be awesome, that I had when I played it.
Fair.
Do we have any other RPGs we want to love
Yes.
/ hate?
Yeah.
No, go for it, Mike. I talk a lot, so...
I'm going to throw out Xenogears.
Oh, I hate Xenogears.
It sounds like we all want to throw it out.
I love that game so much when I first played it, and playing it again, I have no idea why.
It's my brother's favorite game, actually. And I recently picked it up at Goodwill for a few bucks, and I was like, hey, Black Label Xenogears. Yeah, that's worth $3. Fun fact, it's trending at around 40, so yay for me. Not that I need more video games in my house, but, you know, I like collecting. And I remember actually having a good time with it, but I stopped playing it near the end because the storytelling just got so heavy-handed. And then there's like this one part where I think you beat a major boss, and then it like gives you some backstory, and then it tells you that like people started eating each other or something, and then it's just like it skips like I don't know. Apparently there was supposed to be like a whole playable chunk there, and that, but you know, they didn't have time for it, so it was like, and then stuff happened, and now you're back, and it was.
I always heard that it was restrictions. They didn't want to go to full 3 CDs, and so they were stuck trying to cram 3 CDs worth of gameplay into 2 CDs, and you end up with this whole area where, like you said, basically there's Ellie sitting there telling you the story in text and going through pages and pages of text, and then you have like a 5-minute gameplay where it's a very quick dungeon and a boss, and it's like, this is why you fought the boss. Let me sit here and explain it to you some more.
Yeah. And, I mean, aside from that, I remember having decently good memories of it. I mean, giant robots are great. I mean, who doesn't like giant robots? If anyone here on this podcast doesn't like giant robots, you're wrong. Yeah. So, you know, and having like an RPG take on that was actually pretty cool. But it's just the framework of it all, where it's just so dense and symbolic, and heavy-handed. I mean, they crucify your party at one point. Yeah. It's like, come on, guys, really? Are we going here?
Hold on, actually, I was just Google searching Xenogears, and I want to show you, like, as you were saying that, I come across this image, and I'm like, yep, that's the game.
Oh, I've never actually played this game, so...
It's probably worth a play, actually.
There were some good things about it, and I can see certain reasons why I liked it when I was younger.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the game, like, not only does it have, like, the main character has all these deep psychological issues that they, like, explore Freudian, you know, psychology.
Oh, yeah, like, it turns out one of the big bad guys is actually your id.
Yeah, but then, like, there's also, like, all these deep religious significance and religious commentary.
And it's like, oh god, it's this weird rotting thing in a spaceship that it's really weird.
And I guess also what bugged me is that the end of the game, like, my favorite part was the combo system, which on a second playthrough I found out is kind of a waste of time because you're just going to use the most powerful combo. There's no reason to use anything else. And so there's this cool like hand-to-hand fighting system, and then there's a very simplified version of that which you do in the robots. And at the end of the game, there's zero reason to do the hand-to-hand. So you're just fighting in robots. And I don't know.
Yeah. Nah, it's flawed. It does some really neat stuff, but it is flawed. Now, that said, I do like Xenoblade Chronicles a lot. That's in the same kind of family of the games made by that creator.
Oh, really?
I've never played Xenosaga, but Xenoblade was very cool. Sort of open world. I've heard people compare it to like how an MMO does combat, but it's got a very anime style story and characters, which it's okay in doses. The world is really cool. The combat's very well done. So, I enjoyed that. I mean, I sunk 100 hours into it. So, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, I haven't played Xenoblade, but I've heard good things about it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So if I may shift, gears for a little while. A while back, Michael was talking about game series, Pokemon I think it was, that in each installment fix everything from the last one, but then introduce some new problems.
Okay.
That was my incredibly important insight, yes.
Yes. So same deal with the Mass Effect series, which I feel the need to bring up because I sank 120 hours into the trilogy. Even missing some of the DLC from 2 and like a little from 3, I think. And that there's a series that hopefully someone else has played.
Yeah, I played it.
Anyone else?
Nope. No.
Okay, that's a shame.
I don't
Overrated?
play video games, apparently.
I guess not. No. So
I thought they're very solid games.
Individually, they're solid games. Together as a trilogy, it's a mess.
I mean, if you're looking for a cohesive gameplay style across all three, then yeah, it's not there. But I think it's a good trilogy.
So, sort of going back to the expectations of people saying, "Oh, the greatest video game series ever! Look at all these choices that you can make, and everything matters." Nothing matters. Mm-hmm. So the whole premise of the series is it's all about choice. Everything you do makes a difference. And realistically, looking at the wiki of if you did this is what would have happened, and if you did that's what would have happened. Most of the choices are simply about, does this character make a cameo in the next game, or does this little item show up on your desk, or just it's all little details. And all of the broader stuff about I just elected an entirely new council because I let the old galactic council get blown up. Surely there's going to be widespread change throughout the galaxy now. No, it's going to be the exact same game next time. Because it doesn't matter who the council is. Things just go on as usual. So it's supposedly all about choice. All of the little details they get right, and all of the broader details, like, you really are just along for the ride.
I mean, that's life. That's what life is. Everything, you think you might have changed something in the greater span of the world, and then you realize, no, you everything you are, everything you have been, everything you will be is not but a leaf floating down the river of time, and you are utterly subject to its whims and completely powerless to stop its flow.
Dust in the...
And it doesn't help, like you were saying, that they decided to change the gameplay style 3 different times throughout the course of the 3-game series.
Sure did.
You're going to make a trilogy, kind of work and move up little by little. Don't, throw out the baby with the bathwater and then come back next time and say, well, yeah, we're all about continuity. All of your choices matter, and we're going to make sure that, we're building to something. But we're not going to build on the gameplay at all. We're just going to completely trash everything that worked okay, and then introduce a whole bunch of new stuff and hope it works.
They didn't know what they were doing. I mean, really, with the first Mass Effect, they had a good idea. They definitely had a good idea.
It just needed some refinement.
And they were just like, all right, we're gonna throw this at the wall and see what sticks.
And then what stuck was Call of Duty in space for the second one.
It was definitely a lot more than Call of Duty in space.
Yeah, but anyhow, Mass Effect needed to at least bring that up. Obligation. And then my last one that I have, the original Mother.
Oh.
So EarthBound being Mother 2.
Yeah.
We know is EarthBound. Love EarthBound. One of my favorite, second favorite RPG.
Yeah.
Good.
I went back and played EarthBound 0, which is the fan translation of Mother.
It's not a fan translation, actually. It's
that's right. It was supposed to be like the official translation that never made it over, and just something like that. Well, either way, was not impressed. I came to appreciate just how good of a sequel EarthBound is, because it took all of these pretty decent, clever, different ideas for the time that just didn't work. And then they fixed all of it and made everything better.
I mean, Shigesato Itoi is on record for saying, he's like, yeah, we didn't do a very good job of balancing that game, especially in the last third. I mean, he was interested in making a game, and he wanted to make a game with, exploring themes that he felt hadn't been explored in other games. Like motherhood and and relationships between characters that at the time it came out on the Famicom, you hadn't really seen a lot of stuff like that. So it's pretty groundbreaking in that regard. And then they really learned a lot of lessons about how to actually make and balance a game, and they applied them to Mother 2 / EarthBound, and they made my favorite game of all time. So also I'm not going to rag on EarthBound because I don't think it's overrated. I think it does so many things very well. And one of the things I want to mention is about the battle system for that, which on a surface is just sort of your classic, Dragon Quest-esque turn-based battle system. But the way they incorporate your hit points into a roller, where there are many enemies that can kill you in one hit, and often do, but if you can end the battle or heal yourself before the roller is completely gone to zero, you can save yourself. Yeah. That's really cool. And then they do the thing that I have no idea why not every RPG does this these days. You can automatically win battles if you are, overpoweringly stronger than the enemy you're fighting. Yeah. It's like, why doesn't everyone do that? It's such a simple thing to do. Yeah. And it's just so helpful for when you're going through, older areas, and you don't feel like stopping every 3 minutes to fight someone who's not worth your time.
Yeah.
All right, that's EarthBound's not overrated. It's great. Everyone should play it. All right, there you go. And it's actually really hard to grind yourself into not having it still be a little bit challenging.
Well, okay, actually, that is something that I've always thought was interesting about EarthBound. The way that they balanced the EXP per level and the amount of EXP that the monsters give in a given area sort of maxes you out for the area that you're in. So you're still challenged at that point, but then as soon as you move on to the next area, you're getting so much more EXP that you're ready to level again. I thought that was they thought that one out a lot.
Yeah.
So, but were we complaining about time?
Oh, what an awful RPG that is. Who likes time?
Okay, well, because I was going to say I can give a list and we can just say yes, no, do we like it, do we hate it.
All right.
Okay, Breath of Fire.
Bleh.
First one, like. Second one, oh my god, the translation's awful. Third one, awesome. Fourth one, I don't remember it very well, but it's okay, not as good as the third one. And then Dragon Quarter was just weird.
I loved the original Breath of Fire when I played it when I was, 7 or whatever. But going back, it is like the most generic RPG.
It is.
Agreed.
It is. But...
I think the key, Jetty, is to play games, go back into the past, play games when you were little, and never play them again, and then you'll love everything.
It's kind of true. Breath of Fire 2, I remember being, so excited. I was like, so when I saw that in the store, I was like, dude, I didn't even know that this was a thing. How is this possible? Mom, we have to buy it. And she was like, no. I was like, oh, what am I going to do without this game? And I remember like talking to all my friends and being like, dude, have you heard about it? And none of them cared about RPGs. And like just talking to everybody and be like, dude, this is gonna be the best game ever. And
I liked upgrading the town. I didn't like that you could shoot yourself in the foot and fail to completely upgrade the town, as I remember. But that was fun.
what was it? I don't know, like Breath of Fire 2, I liked it when I originally played it, but again, playing it again, I don't know, it was disjointed, I guess. Like it was a bunch of individual character stories, and I didn't feel like it had a cohesive plot, and that the end plot was just sort of thrown together at the end. Like, oh yeah, we forgot that there was this boss that he had at the beginning of the game. Here he is again. You're gonna fight him.
All right, lightning round. Come on.
Okay.
Yeah, lightning round.
Luffy 2.
Haven't played it.
Great puzzles, great character development. A little bit of spoilers because the first game actually starts with the ending of the second game, but it's very well crafted. Especially if you like different things to do in your RPG than just battle monsters.
Yeah, it was Lufia has always been like one of the more anime RPG
Yes.
series, but other than that, Lufia 2, like you said, puzzles, good game in general. Illusion of Gaia.
Haven't played it.
Very, very good. Definitely worth your time to check out if it's if you're looking for something different than the Final Fantasies.
Yeah, action, battle, etc. Secret of Mana.
I like it a lot. Really great distinction for being a multiplayer RPG for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, action.
And one that only works as a multiplayer RPG because single playering through it is very tedious.
I do it, but
Yeah, loved it as a kid. Went back because like, oh man, I remember loving the story. There is no story. Really.
It's sort of the game overall is sort of a mishmash of a bunch of other things I've seen elsewhere. So maybe at the time when it came out, it would have been awesome.
Yeah.
But having played a bunch of other things, I'm like, oh well, I could get this from this game and that from that game, and I'll just go play those games.
Yeah, it was I think pretty much the earliest action RPG of that style. But in that sense, there was a lot of things that weren't very polished.
Next game.
Okay, so we're going to get into Japan only at this point, where we get into Terranigma.
I mean, I played Terranigma. It's good. I like it. It's one of those quintet games.
Yeah, it was the continuation of the Soul Blazer Illusion of Gaia concept.
Actually, it was also released in Europe though.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, you can get a ROM of it. It's good.
Yeah.
If you try Illusion of Gaia or Soul Blazer and you end up liking those, Terranigma I say is probably the best iteration of those, I think.
Yeah, no, very solid game, great graphics, good music, gameplay more action styled again, but I guess closer to Secret of Mana than to Illusion of Gaia, I feel.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But okay, how about Seiken Densetsu 3, the sequel to Secret of Mana that was only released in Japan?
Haven't played that.
Pretty good. Branching storylines are a plus. Can get a little frustrating if you don't kind of do your characters right. But in general, having Secret of Mana, but you get to choose which choose from like 6 characters who you have in your party, and branch. You can play the games differently every time and see different parts of the story. That's cool.
Yeah.
If you like Secret of Mana, play Seiken Densetsu 3.
And then continuing with that sort of multi-character, multi-story, they all come together at some point. Treasure of the Rudora no Hihou, if anyone's heard of that one.
I have not played that, though I think I might get a repro card of it, actually, at some point.
Because the only thing, like, I tried playing it, and the graphics were really good, and I was excited about, like, whoa, this is like a really serious RPG that I've never heard of at the time. And they had the cool magic system where you, like, build your own spells. Basically, you, like, spell out words, and, kind of like how you make words out of Latin, you, like, put together different things to come up with, fire strong, fire, like, whatever. I don't know. So that was cool, but I never really got very far. Live Alive?
Never played it.
Yeah.
Jenny, are we suddenly gaming outside the mainstream or something?
I think we are. Like, these are all, again, back when I was really big into emulating games, I downloaded all of these, like, they were really poorly translated at the time, if they had a translation at all, but they were, like, continuations or really late Super Nintendo games that never just came over here. I don't know, you get a mishmash of like, yeah, it's from Square, but it was really weird and didn't make a lot of sense.
All right, I'm going to hijack it because I'm going to bring it back to the U.S. and I'm going to give us some PS1, PS2 era RPGs really quick.
Okay.
So round this out. And were you going to say Bahamut Lagoon?
I probably should have had that on my list. I just came up with it off the top of my head, so.
Okay. All right, Shadow Hearts. Anyone play the Shadow Hearts series on PS1? Or, sorry, PS2?
I was a Nintendo-only guy up until a very couple years ago, so I am out of this part of the conversation.
Yeah, same.
I watched a friend play it, that's it.
Yeah, kind of, what do I want to say, gothic horror? Historical fiction JRPG set around the beginning of World War I. You've got a very eclectic party. The protagonist is confused with demons. And you get this weird kind of historical fiction plot line, but the mechanics are very solid. They use in battle, they basically kind of use a little spinner that you control to determine how you're going to hit. I'm actually playing Shadow Hearts 2 right now, replaying it because it's one of my favorites. Do we want to count Fire Emblem, or do we want to say that's more tactical?
Yeah, because, like, I don't know, I mean, it's still an RPG like Final Fantasy Tactics or anything, but I feel like that might start get away from, like, then we
That's
get
fair.
Shining Force and all that.
Yeah, okay. Shin Megami Tensei, or the
I played
Persona
one
series.
Fire Emblem game.
I've heard that Shin Megami Tensei is supposed to be, like, an excellent classic series that everyone should play, but I have never actually gotten around to it.
Shin Megami Tensei 4 on the 3DS is really good. I can't recommend that enough. It's tough. The Shin Megami Tensei series are known for being really unforgiving. But Shin Megami Tensei 4 does have optional DLC that you can download that will let you grind really easily. So that's something to consider. And then you have the Persona series, which is related, but it's also it's an RPG / school sim.
Yeah.
Which I got Persona 3 Portable earlier this year and absolutely got addicted to it. So
Vagrant Story.
I wish they would have done so much more with Vagrant Story. I missed that game. I used to have it. I have no idea where it is. I've been wanting to revisit it for a while. It might not hold up because I haven't played it since high school, but yeah, the action RPG in this weird crumbling city and you collect these ancient grimoires to do various things with. I was down with it.
Yeah. Oh, what am I thinking of? Oh, I'm totally...
You're thinking of Golden Sun.
Okay, Golden Sun, how about that? I've never played it.
It's a series of good enough RPGs. Like, the first one is, okay, fine, fun. I like the synergy powers. You can have some creative puzzle solving on top of your regular RPGing. And then it's like, and then the last quarter of the second game is amazing. I'm like, where was this for the entire rest of the series? And then it goes back to, okay, pretty good when you get to Dark Dawn. It's like, oh, I've done some of this before in, like, Metroid and Zelda, this whole Dark World shtick. But, you know, it's fun, not amazing.
I like them. Mario and Luigi games. Like Superstar Saga and Bowser's Inside Story and Partners in Time.
I like all of those. I like all of them a lot. Those are some of my favorites. Bowser's Inside Story in particular for being like very working with, instead of adding new things, really working with what was a lot of stuff that was already established to make something really interesting.
Wild Arms.
Really interesting. I watched my brother play it, and nice take on, sort of open world exploration. Well, not open world, but that sort of Final Fantasy formula where, it starts off a bit linear, but then opens up the world, and it gives you a sort of a different fantasy world where you've got technology, but you've also got ancient and godlike beings that you can. They made a world I felt I had a really good amount of history to it. That I liked.
Yeah.
So.
What about the Ultima series?
Oh.
Lots of Ultima games.
Has anyone actually played those?
I've played the original Ultima, which is like 4 colors and 7 pixels on the screen, and that's all you get. And this is one of the original RPGs.
Yeah.
And even though the graphics don't hold up, there's like no sound to speak of.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly okay. It's solid gameplay, a lot of randomly generated dungeons, as I recall, and monsters that look like, sticks falling out from the ceiling, but surprisingly solid gameplay.
Because I remember seeing the cartridge at the game store when I was, like 8, and being like, wow, an RPG that I've never heard of. And I had the chance to play, I wanted to start at the beginning of the series, so I loaded up one of the earlier games for the NES recently. I was like, oh, this is such a nightmare. I don't think I can stand this without any nostalgia behind it.
Anyone played Sonic the Hedgehog: The Dark Brotherhood?
I have.
Where's Matt?
It's not terrible.
Where's Matt?
Yeah, I really went into it with a lot of low expectations because it was a game my younger brother got, and I was like, oh, you're just getting this wacky Sonic game, whatever. And I played through it after he did, and I was honestly it was more interesting than I thought it was going to be. It's not great.
It's clunky. That's the term I want to use for it.
It does seem like it could have been something really interesting had the series kept going, but I think they abandoned ship after the first game.
Yeah.
They played around, and one of the things is I do kind of wish it did better because I feel like the Sonic's games world now has just become so populated with characters and story that, you know what, I think it would make a pretty good RPG with characters you meet and story and having these different things. I think modern Sonic is a lot more conducive to story. So television shows, Sonic television shows are probably the best direct video game shows. This is a video game, now it's a show. I feel like Sonic had the most. It had 4 different series, 5 as soon as Sonic Boom comes out. And I feel like the way that the universe has been made kind of speaks to that. It's also got, a long-run comic series. So I feel like RPG could have done really well with that had they continued. And they explored some interesting things in the first part of the game, and then the second part of the game went into this weird other realm that didn't really have much to do with anything else. But they did that sort of world exploring, here's the Sonic world in RPG form, so you can sort of see how everything works together in more of a story sense. And they did that really well for the first part of the game, and then, even probably less than halfway through, you get shunted off to this entire other world, and you just kind of ignore it for the rest of the game. But surprisingly not terrible.
Jetty, thou art forgetting a rather significant series.
Am I?
Thou art.
Wait. Oh, that's... sorry.
Yeah.
Is it Kingdom Hearts?
But, for crying out loud. Dagron Warrior.
Well, okay, but I guess my focus was on later games, do we really want to talk about Dragon Warrior and Dragon Warrior 4?
Well, no. I've played 2 and 3.
We're all the way up to 10. It hasn't been released in the U.S., but we had Dragon Quest 9.
I never played the ones that were not on the Nintendo Entertainment System.
The ones that were quests and not warriors?
Yeah.
Dragon Quest 8, I think, is actually probably the best of the entire series, and that's a PS2 game.
Yeah, I've never played it. I do have fond memories of Dragon Warrior 4. I don't have many complaints aside from, obviously talk stairs. I thought that the story was pretty good, and the concept of going around and gathering up the heroes and then finding the one central hero and playing the game from there, that was cool. And then the graphics, even...
Yeah, the graphics didn't really get all that much better. There's a jump from the first one, but after that just sort of said, well, this is the style we're sticking with, and we're not going to try any harder.
Yeah.
The fourth one, I like the fourth one, but it's populated with inept buffoons, because allowing your party members to figure out what they want to do is not a good idea when Dopey Magoo over there is deciding to cast the instant death spell on the boss, who for the last 5 turns has been obviously immune to the instant death spell.
Yeah, Taloon just trips and falls.
I like 1 for the simplicity. It is a terrible grind fest, but it's just straightforward, mindless, with enough. You need to actually be skillful to get through it, despite everything. I like it for that.
It was like the progenitor, They didn't need to do a whole lot then because it was completely new.
And the second one is just a travesty because all of your characters are unique and horrible at the same time in their uniqueness, and
They're really bad. No one in that party can do anything.
and all of the monsters. The princess is made of paper. All of the monsters are oppressively bad. It's like, I have completely aced this area. I'm gonna walk over a bridge and kick the butt of my tombstone. Sorry, it's just not. And then 3 is good. I played the Game Boy Color remake of 3, so I'm not sure how the original stacks up, but I like being able to pick and choose and swap out your party members, and it was just kind of fun to wander around and explore and gradually find out what was going on.
I enjoy 3 a lot.
I briefly played 3 early on, and I've been putting off playing it for a long time because I want to save and be able to enjoy a fresh NES RPG someday. You know what I mean? That I want to be able to go into it without much expectation and just say, let's sit down and play a classic RPG, not knowing what I'm going into exactly.
I've got, sort of for that purpose, I've got Phantasy Star on the Wii Virtual Console, the original, to play at some point.
I've got Mega Man 9 in my backlog for that. I'm saving that for a rainy day.
Totally an RPG.
Well, I'm just talking about games in general. Goodness gracious. I've had nothing to say for like the past 15 minutes. I wanted to say something. I wasn't alive when the SNES was out and all of these games were coming out. So I didn't buy them, and I don't hear them talked about except here mostly, so I haven't really had that much of a... All of my weird games are from, like, DS and Game Boy and Wii.
And that's totally fine. You've just got people who go to conventions and pick up things in the game rooms, and who go to yard sales and pick up old games there.
Yeah, I don't have a car, so both of those things are kind of difficult. And the one convention that I go to doesn't, like, sell video games. They're like no video games.
Don't buy video games at a convention. Their prices, they jack up the prices. Go yard sailing.
And then you're cruising USA for the N64 copy doesn't work.
There's actually
you can clean them. That's fine.
Goodwill apparently opened up a video game branch. Like they just, instead of like having random assortments of video games in every single Goodwill store, they compiled it all into one.
I mean, they have their own eBay site these days.
But apparently, this one store, it has like computers, it has like Oculus Rift demo stuff. You can like go in and just play games. You can.
What the? They are not a thrift store anymore.
This is a specific branch of Goodwill. It's called
Random
something
tangent.
else.
Never give your things to Goodwill because they are awful. They really make a point like, oh, we employ the differently abled. They pay them as little as they can get away with. Meanwhile, their CEOs are making hundreds of thousands of dollars off of things that you gave them. Okay, end rant.
Well, but apparently they have what I've heard. I don't know if it's true, but they've had good prices, and you can test out pretty much all the games you could test out in the store before you bought them. So that I might be picking up some stuff. I need to start picking up stuff like that so that I can say things during these podcasts. It'd be nice.
I mean, I go to Goodwill so specifically so I can take their pricey things for cheap so they can't resell.
Obligatory mention of Crystallis.
Oh.
Good one.
Yep. I mean, yeah, it obviously has its issues with the story, not really... The ending is so great, but trying to figure out what you're doing the rest of the game.
The instruction manual helps a lot on that front. Back in the days when you needed to read the instruction manual.
Yeah.
And another RPG series that is on my watch list that I want to try and get, Ys, whatever it's called, 1 and 2. Yes.
No, East.
Yes.
Yeah, see what I did there.
Yeah. So I watched a little bit of a video playthrough of it just to get a sense of, is this something that I'd be interested in? And I link it to Crystallis now because I'm pretty sure they use a couple of the same sound effects, which was really exciting. I said, I don't care what else the rest of this game is like, I'm playing this now because it's got the Crystallis doodly dudes.
I played Ys 3 for the Super Nintendo, Wanderers of Ys.
That's a great game.
It's
a really fun game.
Another action RPG side-scroller. I've never played any of the others.
I tried I tried one on PSP, but that one's solid. That one's really solid.
Saga Frontier.
I like it, but I can understand why people wouldn't. It's odd. It's very odd.
Lunar. Nobody?
Nope.
Okay. Vandal Hearts.
Nope.
Azure Dreams.
Nope.
Suikoden.
Nope. I'm sorry, we pretty much exhausted almost everything I've played that is actually an RPG and not like sort of an RPG.
And
I mean, we've talked about we mentioned Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. We haven't talked about any MMOs.
Yeah.
And maybe mentioned the word MMO at one point, and then things like Heroes of Might and Magic or the Might and Magic games, which I've had very little contact with, except for 3.
I think we've hit most of everyone's sort of big reserves.
Yeah, and there's going to be like the one game that the one person who's really passionate about comes back and says, "I can't believe you didn't talk about this game." Well, we're sorry.
I feel like the problem is most games have RPG elements now, so it's like, is Borderlands an RPG? Like, no, it's a FPS with RPG elements. And I feel like, there's still the Final Fantasy series, there's still the Dragon Quest series. Like, there are classically styled RPGs now, I guess.
Oh, and there's Neverwinter Nights, where I started to play as a thief.
Well, yeah, okay, so...
The only companion I could get to come with me was another thief. I'm like, I need a mage, a cleric, a fighter. Like, 2 thieves thieving around is not going to get me far. And
I really got to go to bed, but... Black Isle Games, Fallout, the original Fallout, Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, all absolutely phenomenal games. Very well done. They're written by who I think is probably the best writer in video games today, Chris Avallone. He's working at Obsidian now with a lot of the other ex-Black Isle people. Yeah, and also they have a new one coming out, Pillars of Eternity, which I...
Was that Pillars of Eternity?
Pillars.
Because I think I'm doing sleep talk now.
Yes, Pillars. But no, those are all absolutely fantastic, and I cannot overhype them enough, actually. So,
well, it sounds like we should probably stop at the inn and spend the night, you guys and gals.
do do do
Do.
That's not the inn. Does that count as the inn?
It's close enough. I'm grabbing at straws here, you guys.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's Mario Land Game Over,
yeah.
which is probably not the best way to...
So, yes, RPGs, some are good, some are bad. Most have some drawbacks at some point.
And Chrono Trigger is awesome.
It's a pretty good game in the end, all said. Okay, so yeah, visit our actual internet website, listen to us on iTunes, rate us highly. If you don't want to rate us highly, we don't exist there. Go on YouTube, gc.net, the letter G, the letter C, the word dot, the word net. We are on Tumblr, gamecola.tumblr.com. We're on Twitter at GameCola. We're on Facebook, search for GameCola. I think that's pretty much everything. Just go to Google and search for GameCola, and hopefully it will come up.
Should I double check?
GameCola.com. Feel the taste of fresh games. I think this podcast is pretty well done.
We are the first. We've got the website. We've got the YouTube channel.
We've got to go to bed.
Oh my God, yes. Sorry,
we have a TV tropes page. Should we tell people to go to our TV tropes page?
We should tell them to go to bed.
Wait, we do?
I forgot about that. I keep meaning to go update.
All right, we need to go to bed.
Yeah, we can do that after the podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Sleep is for the weak.
Bye, and don't forget to hold reset when you power off.
Yes.
All right, see ya.
Bye.
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 Did anybody actually change their opinions on anything?
No.
Who does?
I don't like Eddie as much as I used to.